Okay, so we'll do two ideas then from Rabbi Lamm today. So one is a drasha from 1963 called The Definition of Anivut. Now, the reason he writes this on Behaalotecha is because when obviously the parsha ends with what? What does Behaalotecha end with?
I haven't finished yet.
Yeah, that's right.
The story of Miriam saying Lashon Hara, Miriam and Aaron saying Lashon Hara about. I was going to give it. I'll be honest. I was going to give a different Dvar Torah before Rabbi Lamm passed away on that incident, and that may have to wait for another year or maybe later in the week. I don't know. But the Torah tells you that Vayish Moshe Anav Me'od Mikol Ha'adam Asher Al Pnei Ha'adamah. Right? Moshe is the most humble person in the world, but the question that Rabbi Lamm asks is, that's very nice to describe Moshe that way, but what is humility or anivut or anava in Torah? If it means self-abnegation or something like that, which is how Mesilat Yesharim takes it as shiflut, so that really makes no sense. Like, did Moshe really think he was nothing? At some point it's just disingenuous. Like, he is the only person to have spoken to God face to face. Like, to really think that you are worth nothing would be to think that God just got it wrong, which admittedly is what he argued originally, but we're years past that scene.
Yeah, but isn't he like the most humble man on earth?
That's what he's saying. So what does it mean, right? If it means self-abnegation, right, devaluation of self, could Moshe pop? Is that what it means?
To an extent.
So, what?
To an extent, but not completely. Right?
Well, yeah, but
you wouldn't be like,
but he's anav mikol adam. If you think that humility is self-abnegation, and he's the most humble person, and you think humility means self-abnegation, that means he is the person who thinks the least of himself in the history of the world, right? Which doesn't really make sense, considering, right? That's just at some point that's just delusional, right? He's Moshe, like he has to. So I'm sure we've talked about this idea a little bit in the past. Right, as he says, do the words Vayish Moshe Anav Me'od mean that Moshe himself did not realize this? Right, he was the only person who spoke God face to face. Does Anivut of Moshe imply that he had a blind spot, that he failed to recognize what any school child knows? Right, meaning at some point it's just delusional. Right, and he continues. He says there's a Caruso. Have to consider himself nothing more than a choir boy or an Einstein, merely an advanced bookkeeper, in order to qualify for anivut. In order to be anav, must one be either untruthful or genuinely inferior? Meaning that can't be what this means. And then what he adds, and this is Kidarko Bakodesh, he says modern psychology is concerned with the problem of inferiority. Right, Deep down, people usually have a most unflattering appraisal of themselves. Many are problems which bring them to psychologists and psychiatrists. Many are the problems which bring them to psychologists and psychiatrists. Yet also often the underlying issue is the lack of self-worth. Are we therefore to accept the Jewish ethical prescription of anivut as an invitation to acquire an inferiority complex? Right? Like, at some point, it doesn't make sense. But then he says more to the point. It doesn't fit in the parsha. Because what does humility have to do with anything here? Hashem says to Miriam, to Aaron, how could you speak against Moshe? He's anav mikol adam. Very good.
What pasuk?
It's the end. Literally, mamish, open to the end. The end. Right? Right? So it's after she speaks badly, and Vayomer Adonai Pitom El Moshe Ve'el Aaron El Miriam Shushel Lechem El Moed V'Yatzush Leshtam. Right, so they go out. So what does he say? Vayomer Shemuna Dvarai. Im Yeni Ve'echem Adonai B'Marei Elav Et Vada B'Chalom Adaber Bo. If all other Nevi'im have visions, Lo Chein Avdi Moshe B'Chol Beiti Nemanu Pe'al Pe'edaber Bo V'Omer V'Lo V'Chadot Shemuna Yabin U'Mador L'Reitem L'Daber B'Avdi V'Moshe. Meaning, right? Like, this is not, it just, why would this even be, relevant? Right? Like, why is this, what is this even, what does it even mean? So, so it goes to the end of the parsha, right? So he says, Right, so his starting point is really a line that we've mentioned in some of our Agadat-Shiurim, a very odd conversation at the end of Sota, where the Gemara says that from when this person died, this stopped existing, right? When this, etc.
Is one of them Nevuah?
No, so the Gemara goes, right through different things. And what happens with Rabbi Yossi? Right, what does he say?
People will know next year.
This is sort of like I'm the most old person, or is he the person who says, is he says humility died after him?
But here's the book, right? Right, this is the introduction to the story. So what does Rabbi Yossi say? What does he say? You remember? They say humility has died, and what does Rabbi Yossi say?
I'm humble.
He said, no, it hasn't died. I'm here. Ha'ika ana. Right? Now, the Nitziv already says, mapitam, right? If you think that humility means that you mean that you're worthless, you can't say, hi, I'm still humble, but I'm still that doesn't work. And therefore, what the Nitziv says is that it must be that in Jewish thought, humility isn't self-abnegation, it's a completely unadorned understanding of who you are. Meaning it's, right, arrogance is thinking you're greater than you actually are, and anava is simply an understanding, an honest understanding of who you are, an appreciation of self, and as part of that, a recognition that whatever you have comes from God. And therefore, it's not thinking you're not great. It's knowing exactly who you are and understanding that in the big picture, right, you owe that to God, and therefore you don't let it get to your head. Right? That's what anivut means. I think maybe I said this last year when I was in 12th grade. Right, I had suggested that if you notice, right, the Rambam and Aristotle in their treatment of ethics overlap. Right, the Rambam sort of modeled himself on Aristotle's ethics. In the Golden Mean and all of that, except there was one big difference, which is their treatment of humility, where Aristotle thinks it is not a virtue, right? It is not a virtue. And the Rambam, following Chazal, say, have a ma'od shval ruach, be very, very humble, go to an extreme. So you could just say it's a machloket, which it obviously is, but what I suggest in 12th grade is that the machloket isn't what you think it is. Right? It's not, Aristotle didn't like humility and the Rambam did. I think it's more that for Aristotle, humility was gauged in relation to other people. And therefore, if you're actually great, you can't devalue yourself. The Rambam understands anava as, I understand my worth with God in the picture. And there, even an absolutely honest look at yourself will not lead it to getting to your head, because you understand, when in respective to God, you are not great, right? You have talents, you may have accomplished a lot, you might be great, but you don't let it get to your head because you understand God gave it to you. It's not something that you should take personally. You should take your responsibilities and your talents and utilize them to serve God, but it's not because, right, it doesn't make you, right, it doesn't allow you to sort of lord yourself over other people. Right, and therefore, so Rabbi Lamm says, right, anivut means not to assume that because you are more competent or great, you have more competence or greater endowments than others, that you thereby become more precious an individual and human being. Anivut means a soft answer to a harsh challenge, silence in the face of abuse, graciousness when receiving honor, dignity in response to humiliation, restraint in the presence of provocation, forbearance and a quiet calm when confronted with calumny and carping criticism. Right, and that type of, he has a way with words, right? Yeah. But he says, with that, you understand why this is relevant to our story. Because if anivut, right, being humble is recognizing who you are and therefore not using it to lord over other people and saying, look, I may have talents, but that doesn't make me better than you as a person, that makes sense. Why that's how the Torah introduces, why is it that Moshe didn't respond and didn't care that Aaron and Miriam talked badly about him, and that even after they talked badly about him and God chastised them and punished them, he davened for Miriam because he was an anav. Not he thought less of himself, he just didn't take it to heart that he was better than other people. He said, I know my talents, I know who I am, but I'm not a more valuable person. God gave me what He gave me. I have responsibilities to God. That's how I live my life. That's what anivut is. It's not about thinking you're low. It's about thinking that no matter how great you become, all human beings maintain their intrinsic value, and therefore you don't take things personally, because often, why do we take things personally? Because I'm better than you, right? How could you hurt me? Moshe was like, look, I may be a Navi, I may be the greatest Navi that ever lived, but that doesn't mean... I did not mean to do that. And that's why it comes here. So therefore he writes, although aware of his spiritual achievements, of his role as leader of the people, even of his historical significance for all generations, he entertained no feelings or hurt sensitivity or injured kavod. There was in his character no admixture of pride, of arrogance, of harshness, or of hypersensitivity. He had an utter lack of gall and contentiousness. He was indeed an anav, more so than any other individual on the face of the earth, and he was able to write those words without self-consciousness. Hence, he did not react at all to the remarks of his brother and sister. Therefore, God said, if Moses is such an anav that he does not defend himself against this offense, I will act for him. And that's how he understands the story, that it's not just explaining why Moshe didn't react, it's why God had to intervene. And then, of course, I'll just end with the end of his drasha, and then I'll take your question. And then because remember, this is a drasha, so he's trying to inspire people. So he writes, here then is the teaching of Judaism, which we can ill afford to do without. When we deal with a husband or wife, with neighbor or friend, with children or students, with subordinates or employees, we must remember that the harsh words reveals our lack of security, and the impatient rejoinder shows up our lack of self-appreciation and self-respect. It is only when we will have achieved real gedula, true inner worth and greatness, that we will learn that remarkable sterling quality of anivut or meekness. Let us leave the synagogue this morning aware of that mutual reciprocal relationship between greatness and meekness. If we have gedula, let us proceed to prove it by developing anivut. And if we doubt whether we really possess gedula, then let us begin to acquire it by emulating the greatest of all mortals, Moses, and the immortal Almighty Himself, and practice anivut in all our human relations. If this anivut does not succeed at once in making us truly great, it at least will offer us the dividends of a better character, a happier life, more relaxed social relations, and the first step on the ladder of Jewish nobility of character. He did, like I said, he was a darshan. He had a very way with words. And the idea here, I do think, is really important. So we'll leave it at that.